Okay, this is part two of a conversation, an evening with Don Bennett, DAS, Disease Avoidance Specialist, speaker, author, uh, expert on the raw food diet and on health and helping people recover their health. Uh, Speaking all the years of the Woodstock Fruit Festival, played a big role in that. Speaking this year at the Slovenian Fruits and Health Festival as well, so check that out. Now, Don, firstly, before we get back into the stuff, I just wanted there's a few things I know about your I guess your history. You were a performer before you were a lecturer and things like that. I'm aware that you were kind of a performer, and what was it you did before you got into all this?
Well, back in junior high school, I met somebody and we struck up a friendship, and we both had certain things in common that we liked. We liked the old time comedians, Laurel and Hardy, Abbott and Costello, and the classic comics. So
Yeah.
we had that in common, and we kind of looked like Laurel and Hardy. I was very thin, lanky, and when my hair is short, I mean, when it's really short, it can be straight. As soon as it starts to grow out, it gets curly, but it can be really straight. And he was very overweight. So he really resembled Oliver Hardy very well. So we just started goofing around with it and putting costumes together and writing scripts and writing bits and then doing them at senior citizen homes and for anybody that would wanted us to perform for them. We didn't think of charging. We just did it to make people laugh because we loved making people laugh.
Yeah.
It's the laughter is the best medicine. That's what they say. So somebody caught our act basically and wrote an article about us in the Daily News or the New York Times or one of those big papers, and then we started getting phone calls because they put my phone number in it. I don't even remember giving it to the interviewer, but they put my phone number in the article, and I started getting phone calls. Now we're 17-year-old kids at the time, and we're like, I remember getting the call when I was hanging out with my friend Paul, and I said, I took the phone, and I said, hey, somebody wants to hire us. What? They want to pay us money? Yeah, they want to pay us money. How much? She's asking how much. And I said, what should we say? Say $50. No, that's too little. Let's say $5,000. No, that's too much. We were trying to figure out how much to, so it just took off from there and it became a profession. So we started performing professionally as those characters and the Marx Brothers, two of the Marx Brothers, and Abbott and Costello. And we traveled all around doing this. We did trade show work, and it was, oh my God, the most fun you could possibly have, making people laugh like crazy at what you were doing. And we even got to meet the ex-wife of Oliver Hardy, who was very old at the time, but she started crying. She goes, my husband and his partner, Stan Laurel, would have loved the fact that you're keeping their memories alive, because that's what we started doing in the first place. So that was the most fun. I don't really do it anymore. People keep saying, work it into your presentations. And I'm trying to come up with ways, because it is a serious subject when I'm talking about how dairy products, increase your risk of breast cancer, dying of breast cancer. So to try and work some of my entertaining into it, I have to see. But I always like working with a partner. I tried doing a single act. It was not the same thing. I'm not cut out for that. So hopefully one day I'll have a partner and then we can do something really cool on stage. And people say, well, if that's what you did, why aren't you performing in the talent shows at the Woodstock Food
That's what I was
Festival?
thinking as well. A bit of Stan Laurel or something. Yeah.
Well, but do you want to be my Oliver Hardy?
There's not that many people of that shape who go to the Woodstock Fruit Festival. I mean,
Right.
proportionately. Uh,
Maybe I'll do some Abbott and Costello along with Dr. Sam, because I know Dr. Sam loves to get up on the stage and
that
do
would be
stuff.
great. Yeah. I don't know if you're aware, but Stan Laurel, the first place he performed was the city that I come from, Glasgow. He's from England, I
Yeah.
believe, but first place it was an old theatre here that he first performed. So we've got a link there. But that's interesting. I remember you mentioning that, and that kind of blew my mind that you'd been in an act, and I remember you saying to me as well that your partner you were very opposite because you were obviously getting into health, and he was, the very opposite to you.
We were the stereotypical odd couple. We would demand separate rooms when we were performing, and we were given separate rooms. because he's there eating junk food and drinking gallons and gallons of Pepsi. I mean, he would drink 2 64-ounce bottles of Pepsi a day. He rotted away all his teeth doing that. And he would smoke cigars, and he's in one room, and I'm in the next room with all my fruit and just, so we were very different in that respect. But, we were good friends that whole time. I mean, we were performing partners for 20 years. So
continuing a raw food diet when you were on the road, were you doing the raw food diet back then?
Well, actually, back then it was a lot. There was a lot of fruit in the diet, but it was still some. I would eat in a restaurant and have like broccoli or just a cooked broccoli dish, and I would say leave this out, just give me the broccoli, and but it was a cooked broccoli dish. So that was at about the time before it was certainly before I went all raw, all fruit and vegetables. But of course, since then, I've traveled around and been in hotels, and I don't have a problem eating all raw once once it just becomes a part of your life. It's just as natural as eating cooked was before. It's, it's not as easy, it's not as available, but yeah, it is in a way. You can find it. I mean, right? I mean, now in the United States, major supermarkets are carrying a lot of organic produce. And that wasn't 40 years ago. 40 years ago when I was buying organic produce, I had to drive 45 minutes to go find it. It was very few and far between. It was very rare to find organic fruits and greens back then. Today, it's all over the place. But again, as I alluded to in the first part of this interview, again, you have to care about where it's grown. The organic farmers of 40 years ago are not the organic farmers of today. It's unfortunate, but it's also reality, and we need to deal with that.
I just want to share, I'm eating right now a little bit. I hope I'm not putting anyone off, but something I like doing is taking dates and putting them with strawberries. Strawberries are in season at the moment, and just kind of eating these together. But Dawn, you're not eating at the moment. You're on a body-initiated fast. Could you tell us what that is? And
well, basically, there are two types of fasting. There's a body-initiated fast, which is how human beings have fasted since the beginning. You just basically lose your appetite. You're not hungry. And if you go by the premise that I eat when I'm hungry and I don't eat when I'm not hungry, well, it's kind of an automatic fast. It's also can be known as an automatic fast, where you just find yourself not eating all day because you never got hungry. And I'm talking about true hunger, which is felt, in this area of the body. It's not felt in your stomach. This comes with time, with understanding what it is. So that's a body-initiated fast. The body calls for it by simply not making you hungry. It's kind of a counterintuitive thing, but you're just simply not hungry. So if I'm not hungry for a day or 2 days or 3 days, it's very simple for me. I just don't eat. I stay hydrated, obviously. So I'm on day 17 of a body-initiated fast. Now, the other kind of fast is what most people do when they fast. It's called an intentional fast. They make a decision to fast, or someone makes the decision for them, or someone recommends that they do a fast, and it's not really being done in concert with their body. And maybe their body has been wanting them to fast for a long time, but you know what, Ronnie? They're always eating ahead of true hunger. They're never waiting for true hunger, so they're always eating ahead of it. And if you do that, how would you know if your body wants you to fast or not, if you're not waiting for true hunger? So some people who do an intentional fast where a decision is made to fast, some of those people are actually, the body is saying, oh, thank God, finally, I've been trying to get you to do this for years. And that's great. But if the body is not trying to get you to fast, if you are experiencing true hunger and you decide to fast, that's different. The body sees it as something different. It didn't call for the fast. So if you stop eating, it doesn't know you did it. On a certain level of the brain, it doesn't know you did this purposefully. All it assumes is you can't find food. Now, the mechanism we're designed for, if a body senses that we can't find food, it starts to dial you down. It doesn't put you into healing mode. It puts you into a sparing mode. It starts dialing you down to conserve fuel, to conserve fuel, basically. It doesn't know you did this on purpose. So that's why it's really, to get the most out of fasting, you want to try and do it when your body calls for it. And that's, unfortunately, since a lot of people who run fasting centers and fasting retreats, it's a business for them, and so they don't really, they're not going to turn away anybody. They're not going to test somebody out and say, all right, let me ask you a question. Are you hungry? Are you feeling true hunger? Do you know what true hunger is? You do. Okay. Are you feeling it? You are. Okay. Then maybe this is not the right time to come here. And so that doesn't get done. So there's not enough pre-fasting work done with people to see if it's really called for or not. Now, some people might think, well, if the body's not calling for a fast, but you stop eating because that's what you want to do to improve your health, it's got to know that. Not at a certain level, not in the subconscious. There's thousands and hundreds of thousands of processes going on in the subconscious. And if it's not calling for a fast and you stop eating, it's going to assume you can't find food. Even though you can see food all around you, on that level of the body, it's going to start dialing you down. And that's not the same as healing. That's not the same as ramping up healing. So this is one of the ways where I differ from some of the fasting practitioners out there who are saying what they're saying. I'm looking at fasting from a different perspective. And yes, I've been told by a certain fasting practitioner that I don't have any business talking about fasting, writing about fasting, or speaking about fasting because I've never fasted anybody. And he's fasted lots of people. Well, that's the most insane thing I've ever heard. And people who hear him say that, again, who are not disciples of his, will say, well, no, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, you can write about space travel without actually having been on the moon. You can write about it, you can study it and research it and know a lot about it without ever having been an astronaut. So it's nonsense. I've done fasts myself, all body-initiated fasts, 7 days, 21 days, and now whatever this is going to turn out to be. And this could be 21 days or more. I'm dealing with something right now that's probably a little bit more serious than a virus, although I'm feeling fine. There was one day during the last 17 days when I woke up, I was not getting out of bed. I basically stayed in bed all day. I was dead to the world. What do I know what was happening inside my body on day 4? I think it was either day 4. I think it was day 4. No. There were other fasts, a 21-day fast 2 years ago. There was one day, I think around day 5, where I had 101 fever. I had a low-grade fever. I just felt like just sitting down all day. I didn't feel like going for any walks or swimming in the ocean. I've not experienced the fever this time around. And I'm losing about half a pound a day, which is about 1,500 calories. So that's covering my basal metabolism with some left over for the walking around that I do. In other words, if you're just coming off a typical Western diet and your body wants you to fast and you do a 21-day fast, I'm on day 17 right now. On day 17, you're not going to be running around and doing interviews and swimming out in the ocean. It's different if you've been eating a raw food, fruit-based diet, all raw for 24 years. Then when your body wants you to fast, it's a whole different experience. So people say, wait, you could be doing a 21 or 24-day fast, and you're doing it by yourself? That's how my ancestors did it many, many thousands of years ago. There weren't fasting retreats back then. You didn't go to this guy's cave to do a 24-day fast. And neither do any of the animals today. They just hunker down, they stop eating, they stay hydrated, maybe not, but they stay hydrated. They don't let themselves dehydrate to the point of getting sick from that. But the point is, they're not eating, they do it by themselves, it's just fine. They can do that because they're in a relatively good state of health. They're in a pristine state of health, which a lot of people aren't. Now, folks like myself and a lot of my colleagues, yeah, we can do one of these without supervision because we know what's going on. So in other words, I was able to fast to completion. That's a phrase, fast to completion, on day 7, the other 7-day fast, the 21-day fast. Hunger came back on day 21. I started eating again. I wasn't concerned about it. Most people that are just getting into this and do a fast because it's called for, they can't necessarily fast to completion. Now, why in heaven's name could that be? We're designed to be able to fast to completion. Why would we have to have blood work done to see when we've run out of all available body fat and now the body is touching protein to exist, to be able to fuel basal metabolism? Why do we have to have blood tests for that? It's because we were never designed to get into such ill states of health where the body doesn't have enough resources to resolve everything during one fast. So the fast has to be broken, you refeed, you come back to do it again in 3 to 6 months or whenever it's appropriate to start doing it again. And then maybe after the second fast, or maybe it might take 3 of those extended water-only fasts to resolve whatever it is you were trying to resolve, just because of bodily resources. So right now, I evidently have the bodily resources where I'm on day 17 and I was on day 21 2 years ago. I'm walking around just fine. The only symptom, lack of hunger. Just not hungry. And believe me, food tastes really good when that hunger comes back. And I've got stuff here, see? I've got this beautiful organic peach from Georgia, It's got my name on it. See, now I can smell it, how great it smells, but I'm recognizing how great it smells, Ronnie, but it's not making me salivate. That's how I know I'm doing a body-initiated fast where my body is just fine with not eating. Because if I hadn't eaten in a number of hours and I got this peach and I'm smelling it, I would certainly start salivating. Even if I wasn't hungry, I would certainly, So I've got some melons here ready to go. I know, guys, I'm getting there. But yeah, so now I'm able to fast the way humans probably fasted many millennia ago. But the issue I have with a lot of fasting practitioners, or not a lot, there's not a lot of them, but with some is that I talk about the two basic kinds of fasting, body-initiated and intentional. Now, how can a fasting practitioner say that that's nonsense? That there's no such thing. I'm misrepresenting fasting. Or when I say, and this is a big one, when I say there's a thing called juice fasting. Now, people are getting ready to jump all over me when I say juice fasting because I put it in quotes. Guys, I'm putting it in quotes, juice fasting, because that's not really fasting. Fasting is not taking in any nutrition, so your digestion shuts down completely. That allows maximum nerve energy to be made available for healing. When I say nerve energy, I mean nervous system energy. It's not caloric energy. It's an electrical energy that you replenish not from food, but by sleeping, especially in phase 4 deep sleep. So when I say juice fasting can be helpful, it's really juice meals is what you're doing. So people say, well, that's not fasting. You can't get any kind of improved healing from that. Well, yes, you can, because what's the basic premise behind water fasting? The shutting down, the dialing down of digestion, in that case, to zero. All right, so you do juice fasting, and your digestion isn't zero, but it's a heck of a lot less than it was when you were just eating solid food, meals of solid food all day. This frees up nervous system energy that the body can use for healing. So to say that the body won't ramp up healing when you're doing juice fasting, that's just not true at all. So that's why I don't mind using the term juice fasting or nutritionally supported fasting. They hate that one even more. What's that? You shouldn't have to take in nutrition. I don't have to take in nutrition from 24 years of eating a raw diet and making sure that diet included enough of all the nutrients that my body requires for optimal health. I can do that now. So I can fast for 21 days. I can just drink water. I don't have to take any juices or any extra nutrition in with it. But not a lot of people can do that. Not everyone can do that. Most people can't. Let me make this basic point, which I get argued about all the time. But for anyone who has a rational, critical thinking mind, they're like, okay, there should be no argument. If you're behind in certain nutrition, if you've got a nutrient insufficiency, a dietary cause, nutrient insufficiency or deficiency, and I'll explain what the difference is in a moment. But if you have that and you decide to fast, no food, and they're going to take you for 21 days, and now you're getting none of that nutrient, whether it's chromium or zinc or I don't care what it is, now you're just deepening that deficiency. So a fast, by going into an extended water-only fast, nutritionally deficit in some way, that can do more harm than good. You could have some benefit from the water fast, but you can also have some detriment being done because that other nutrient now went from an insufficiency to a deficiency. And there's no clear-cut official terms for insufficiency and deficiency. The way I describe it is, if you have a nutrient insufficiency, it's not nutrient sufficiency. So you don't have enough that the body would like to have for optimal functioning. In other words, one of your glands or organs is under nutrition in a certain nutrient, so it's not functioning up to 100%. If that's your thymus gland, that's not good. Thymus gland makes T killer cells. If it's your thyroid, that's not good. You could have an underfunctioning thyroid where you're slightly hypothyroid now. Not full blown where you're going to get a diagnosis, but you're a little more cold sensitive. Maybe your hair is thinning. These are insufficiency issues. Nothing life-threatening. Insufficiencies have nothing life-threatening associated with them. But if it gets worse, it crosses that line to a deficiency. A deficiency is where you start noticing symptoms. It's now technically potentially serious, where if you don't do something about it, if you don't find out what's causing your symptoms and address it, it could get dangerous. In the case of B12 is an obvious example. It's not a food-provided nutrient, but it is a nutrient we need. If you let your B12 level get too low, you can do damage to your neurological system, and sometimes it can be irreversible damage. Well, that's not good. But the other nutrients, you can damage organs, and yes, the body has a good capacity to recover function of those organs, but you know what? Why damage them in the first place? So if you have symptoms And it could be something, and it could be nutrition, and it could be something else. Let's not just throw away the nutrition aspect and just poo-poo that and just say it can't be that, because we have very popular health educators, raw health educators, saying, no, just eat all fruits and vegetables. You don't have to worry about your nutrition. Yes, we still do. It's quite evident that we still do. And why do I say it's quite evident? Because there's two ways. Number one, on paper, yes, you do the research, you see the soils are not as nutritious as they once were, even 100 years ago. I mean, I'm going to quote something in about a minute when I talk about a little rebuttal that I'm going to do to something that was said about the nutritional adjunct that I add to my diet. And we started talking about greens, by the way, in that first part of this interview. I don't eat any greens anymore. I really don't. If you read Ann Osborne's book, you'll understand why. It's also on my blog, health101.org/blog. In there, it explains why we're not really huge greens eaters, but a lot of us are eating huge amounts of greens, and not because we're told to, but because we really want to, because we're minerally insufficient, and we're trying to bolster that mineral content up. And greens tend to be a better supplier, Ronnie, as you know, of minerals than fruits. Okay. But since we're not really designed to be big greens eaters, because the bonobo and the chimps are not huge green eaters, they're not having big green salads, why are we? It's in an effort to get enough minerals that are not present in the fruits that we're buying that are grown in the minerally, nutritionally subpar soil of the agri-based food industry. Okay, so I add something to my diet. I'll put something in my banana smoothie to make sure that my body is getting enough of all the nutrients it requires for optimal health. The three key words there: enough of all, optimal health. Enough of all. To have less than enough of all of the nutrients we require for optimal health, not good. And to say that, no, we can get it just from eating fruits and greens is a lovely notion, and I would really love to believe it. It would make my life a little simpler, and it certainly make what I'm selling to people, the raw food diet, easier to sell because there's no supplements involved. But it's not true. It doesn't square with reality, so I'm not going to believe in something that doesn't square with reality. So when I said, how do we know? Part one is on paper. We look at the soil nutrition. We look at, so what's the odds of us getting enough zinc? And then you go to part two, the empirical evidence, when we test people for certain things. And I'm not talking about a regular blood test for zinc. It's kind of worthless, because the amount of zinc, in other words, to assess the amount of zinc you have, you really have to look inside the cell, because that's where the zinc is supposed to be. Things like zinc are closely controlled by the body. So yeah, you may have some zinc in your blood, in your serum, but that's not really what you're supposed to be going by. So some standard tests for certain nutrients are basically worthless. Like I'll give you an example, the B12 test. Again, not a food-provided nutrient, but it's a good example. How much B12 you have in circulation in your blood is meaningless. What you need to know is, how is your body utilizing B12? I've had clients who have tested at the low end of the okay range for things like B12 and zinc and selenium, but when you tested certain markers of how well the body is functioning B12-wise, like looking at methylmalonic acid for B12, because if you're not utilizing enough B12, your methylmalonic acid level will go high. They'll go out of range high. And that right away, there's very few other reasons why that would be. The majority, 99% of the reason is you don't have a good B12 level. All right, so now we bring their B12 level up. Now, it was in an okay range. It was in the bottom of the range, but it was in an okay range blood-wise. So now you bring it up a bit more. MMA comes down into range and everything's fine. So you can't always rely on blood tests. They're good for some things and they're not good for other things. So yeah, nutritional adequacy is what I'm a big proponent of. I deal with reality. I've always been hugely into reality. I realized as a teenager that I was taken advantage of as a young kid by some people. That's why I came to love animals and reality, because animals and reality cannot lie to you. They're incapable of lying. It's why I love animals and dogs and things like that. They can't lie. They don't have the capacity to it. Neither does reality. Reality is just, it is what it is. Now, you've got to figure out what it's saying. You've got to figure out what it's telling you. That's the hard part. But that's why you want to be a researcher and not a student. You want to do multi-source education and not just put all your eggs, so to speak, in one basket and follow one particular educator, and that includes myself. You want to get information in from a lot of educators because you want to find the conflicting information. What? No, people don't want conflicting information. This is counterintuitive. No, you do want conflicting information. because there's a lot of misinformation out there. My whole third book is based on all the misinformation that's out there. So in order to find out what is the misinformation, and if you are following it, because you don't want to be, you want to find conflicting information. Because once you have the conflicting information, you're more likely than not have something that's true and something that's not true. Now you got to figure out which it is, but that's where research comes in. But you can't research it until you know that you may not be following something that's true. So on the subject of nutritional adequacy, I'm huge on that, just because I found that once I started adding that green supplement to my diet, it's a green powder supplement, to my diet and my smoothies, my desire for greens, for leafy greens, went boom, gone. I don't desire them anymore. Why? My mineral levels are now topped off. Now I can eat the diet that we're truly designed to eat. Tropical fruits. Well, I try and get as many tropical fruits as I can. I'm very lucky in South Florida where I can get black sapote and even white sapote I found now, and the creamy bananas,
Sure.
as I was talking about in the first interview. So I can do that. But I'm
So
not
you
really eating any
recommend
greens.
the barley juice powder. You want to speak about that a little bit? That's I've certainly seen a lot of people who have been trying that out. So, want to speak more about that, or
Right. Well, first I want, yeah. Well, I do want to touch upon it because it's important for people to know about it, but it's also important for people to know about the misinformation that's surrounding it. There's a lot of what I would call natural hygiene fundamentalists, if I can use that term. And they're like pure natural hygiene. And natural hygiene, they say, says no supplements, just zero, no, bad, wrong, no supplements. But that's not what natural hygiene actually says. Natural hygiene says we need to get enough of all the nutrients that we require for optimal health. That's what natural hygiene is all about, how to attain and maintain optimal health. So it doesn't say no supplements. It says you need what you need. Now, it would be logical to assume that if you can't get what you need for optimal health, okay, from the fruits and greens that you're buying because of how they're grown, well, you have two choices. Don't do anything because you live by a philosophy of, no, I'm not going to take any supplements because this person who's following natural hygiene says that's what natural hygiene says, or do something about it. Now, I'm accused of misrepresenting natural hygiene. So I put this challenge out to everybody out there.
Health,
Go to here.
health101.org/NH for anyone just listening and can't see.
NH. Right. And that's basically my interpretation, if you will, of natural hygiene. Natural hygiene is just the science of health. Okay, it's named after the Greek goddess Hygeia, the goddess of health. Oh my God, there was a goddess of health. Who knew? But there she is, and we don't hear about her anymore because the pharmaceutical industry, I guarantee you, does not have her portrait hanging in their halls of their offices. Okay, so that's what natural hygiene basically says. It's all about how to attain the best health your DNA will allow you to have. That's my interpretation of it, and how to do that as healthfully as possible. In other words, how to compensate for where we're living today. We're not living, Ronnie, where we lived many millennia ago. The food that we're eating today is not coming from where it came many millennia ago. And I've seen the difference between the bananas that are grown as a cash crop and bananas that are grown as they probably grew out in the wild, spaced very far apart, in decent soil. That's probably not a good way to phrase that. They're grown in soil that's decent. So there is a difference. And again, in the first part, I spoke about Don Weaver, one of the world's leading experts on soil nutrition. So when I asked him, do you use anything to compensate for the nutritionally subpar food that people are buying and that you buy sometimes? He goes, oh, absolutely. And he told me what it was. It was basically barley grass juice powder. Not barley grass powder, barley grass juice powder. It's barley grass juiced, and it's made into a powder, and you add it to your smoothie. And like I said, I used to crave greens a lot in an effort to get enough minerals. When I started incorporating that into my diet, just as an experiment to see how I would feel, I just noticed that I wasn't buying greens anymore, because I go to the store, I always look throughout the whole entire produce area, and I buy what speaks to me, as we would have thousands of years ago. We roam around and we pick what speaks to us. So there are sometimes, on a rare occasion, I'd look at the red bell peppers, and go, ooh, but most of the time, no. Every once in a while, I look at the red bell peppers that I look at every time I go, and I shop every day, as I would have hundreds of thousands of years ago. Most people don't shop every day, so I can see, and I just wasn't buying greens anymore. I'm like, that was an aha moment for me, because I didn't do it deliberately. It's just my body's desire for greens went away. And it was a lot easier digestion-wise, because now I didn't have to make these big salads of these greens anymore. On a rare occasion, when I look at the greens, because I'll still look at them to give my body a chance to say, yeah, today I want. On a rare occasion, I'll want some spinach. My body will want some spinach. If I had to guess, if you put a gun to my head, could be for the iron. I don't know. But it's on such a rare occasion. And in trying to correlate it, a lot of times it's when I've run out of the green powder that I add to my smoothies, and I haven't ordered yet, or I ordered, it hasn't come in yet. So I've been without that in my diet for a couple of weeks. Then the spinach maybe looks good to me then. And so that makes sense that there's a good reason for that. Now, there was recently an interview that you had done with Doug Graham, where there was a section of the interview where you did ask him about the barley grass juice powder, and he commented. And I'd like to just kind of do a bit of a rebuttal on that if I can. All right. I'll take it point by point. He had said that when you juice and dry and powderize plant matter, you're removing nutrients, and that's not accurate. First of all, nutrients, plural, no. Yes, you're removing the fiber, and technically fiber is a nutrient, and you're taking that out. But when you do juicing, that's one of the benefits of juicing. You take out the fiber, and just all you're left with is the concentrated nutrients of the juice, and you drink that, or you add it to a smoothie or something to bolster your nutritional input. That's why we do juicing, and that's why juicing can really, really help. But to say that when you juice and dry and powderize, as long as you're drying at a low temperature and using a method that doesn't damage the nutrients, no, you're not really losing a lot. Do you get 100%? Does 100% come across? No, but if 90% comes across, that's pretty darn good. Okay, so you have to get a product, and not all the barley grass juice products are dried the same way. So you have to get one that's dried the proper way so the nutrients will be there. Number two, Doug says that barley grass juice powder offers nothing in the way of nutrients and is a, quote, a detriment to your nutrition, unquote. Well, if barley grass juice powder provides no meaningful amounts of nutrition, I would like Doug to explain to me why it has helped people resolve various conditions of ill health. And this is, again, in my practice. I've been doing it for 12 years. I've been using the barley grass juice powder for 12 years to help people with their nutrient insufficiencies. Now, Doug could say maybe, well, I've never seen this myself. Well, Doug has no experience with it. He doesn't believe in using it, so he doesn't use it in his own practice. So how would he see experience with it? Instead of sitting down with me and saying, well, tell me more about this. I want to learn about this. And we do some peer-to-peering. That just doesn't seem to happen. The third point, he mentioned something about the 5-year-old celery analogy. That's just ridiculous. I'm not going to even comment on that. Number 4, why barley grass juice powder would be, well, he was asking, why would barley grass juice powder be any more nutritious than celery? Because aren't they grown in the same soil? That's what he's asking, kind of rhetorically. Well, no, they're not grown in the same soil. The difference between store-bought celery and barley grass juice powder is that the celery was grown in soil from the agro-based food industry, and they grow for yield and size and appearance and pest resistance and shelf life and growth rate and sugar content. They're growing for a lot of things, but they're not growing for nutritional content because there's no demand for it and there's no profit in it for them. Okay? Now, the barley grass juice powder, the barley grass that's made into that juice powder, was grown to be used specifically as a nutritional supplement. So no, it's not grown in the same soil. If we discovered that the fruits that we're buying from the agro-based food industry is really subpar nutritionally, would anyone care? Would the growers say, oh, we're sorry, we'll fix that up for you. We'll add more than just potassium and phosphorus back to the soils? No, they're not going to do anything, and no one's going to be complaining about it. But if something that's sold as a nutritional supplement, like the barley grass juice powder, is found to be devoid of the nutrients that's in their assay and their ingredient deck, they're out of business. So they have every reason to grow it properly. So the soils, no, Doug, if you're listening, no, the soils are not the same. Now, number 5, the concept of drying plant matter is a way of preserving it. And as long as the drying process isn't higher than a certain temperature, the nutrients are intact. Again, not 100%, of course, but a lot. So when green plant matter is dried and powdered and bottled with a moisture-absorbing packet in an airtight glass container, the bulk of the nutrition is intact. Now, that's just, on paper. We can show this on paper that this would be, and through nutritional assays of the product. We can show this. This has been shown. But then empirical evidence, if the people that are using it, and using it in meaningful amounts, not like a little teaspoon once a day, but in meaningful amounts, why is it helping to resolve their nutritional inadequacies and the health issues that they have with those? Now, Doug also said, well, they wouldn't keep coming out with new supplements if the old ones were working. Well, that just shows he has no knowledge of how the supplement industry works. 95% of the supplements in the supplement industry are garbage, and they're sold just to make money. They're not really helpful. So, no, just because there's this helpful one that's been around for a very, very long time, new ones are going to always come out because those guys are just trying to make money off the next biggest thing, dried pomegranate, dung beetle, whatever it's going to be. I have no idea. So that's just a ridiculous statement to say that they wouldn't come out with new stuff if the old stuff was working. Now, in today's world, it's also said, and Doug says, that deficiency is not really the problem. That 95% at least of all the nutritional problems are problems of excess. This is he's fond of saying, and these are not problems of deficiency. Now, of course, there are certainly health issues caused by too much fat, too much protein, too many calories, too many empty calorie foods, too much processed sugar, high fructose corn syrup, all that stuff. But to state as if it were established fact that health issues are not caused by dietary nutritional deficiencies, it demonstrates a lack of the understanding of the issue, okay? And by the way, how anyone can figure out 95%, it's too complex to try and peg it with a percentage of what all the industries, medical industry and raw food practitioners can put our heads together and say, yes, it's 95% is due to deficiency. I don't see how anyone could come up with any kind of exact percentage or even in a small range like that. There is problems with excess and there's problems with deficiency, and we have to recognize both. The last point I just wanted to make is where our foods come from today is not where they came from many millennia ago. Now, if you believe that the nutritional quality today is the same as it's always been or as it was a long time ago, there was a hallmark study done at the University of Texas, Austin, that would disagree with that. They examined nutritional data from both 1950 and from the year 2000 for about 43 different vegetables and fruits, and they confirmed reliable declines just over that period of time, that half century of time, in the amounts of protein, calcium, phosphorus, iron, B2, vitamin C, just to name a few. Okay? So researchers attribute this decline in nutritional content to the agriculture's industry's way of growing things, as I said, for yield, appearance, size, pest resistance, all those things, but not nutritional content. The agri-based business is in business to make a profit. And they're under no mandate by any government, at least in the United States. They're not under any mandate to provide the public with food that provides enough of all of the nutrients that we need for optimal health. Now, this is just my brief rebuttal. If you want to read those 8 points with me getting more detail about it. Whoops. Let me just, I can't see where, I lost my camera. Here it is. If you go to here, that's it. And that will go into detail about what I've said. Okay, so, I mean, Doug has a lot of great points. I give him his due. He has helped to popularize the raw food diet, and I'm personally thankful for that. But it doesn't give him a pass on saying things that don't square with nature. And I will call out people's stuff when they do stuff like that. I'm not going to sit back and just only focus on a person's positive. I'm not an optimist, and I'm not a pessimist. That's what people know about me, and they think it's really weird. You're not an optimist, and you're not a pessimist. What the heck are you? I'm in the middle, square in the middle. I'm a realist, because that's where my body exists, so that's what I want to deal with. I want to deal with the real world and the way it is today, not the way it was many millennia ago, because we can make certain comparisons, but we can't make certain comparisons. We're domesticated animals today. What happens when you take wolves out of their
Sure.
natural environment in the form of dogs and domesticate them and put them in somebody's home. You now need dog and cat hospitals. My God, do you have them in Scotland, dog and cat and animal hospitals? They're all over. Animal hospitals. Why do we need so many animal hospitals? For the same reason we need human hospitals. We didn't need those hospitals way back when we were getting a nutrient sufficiency.
Yeah, I would
So
just
it
say
is
to
an
anyone
issue.
out there,
It should be something that you look at and not as
just
a philosophy.
as you're saying, have a
Do it
look
as a
at the information.
researcher. Don't do it as a student.
I've not
Multi-source
really
education.
researched a lot of stuff myself. I'm still learning. I've been into this lifestyle maybe 3 years, so still learning myself. But it was good to hear that information, Don. So a lot of people will be able to look into that, look at your rebuttal and everything. Um,
And Ronnie, it's also good to ask. I mean, my favorite question is why. Not how is a good question. How is a great question. But I like asking why. Because people need to know why. When you tell somebody that, well, this person is ripping you off, and here's how he's doing it, it's good to let them know, it's good for them to understand, well, why is he doing it? That really helps explain, especially if you like the person, if you think the person is good. So I like explaining why. And under the why category, when people say, people just assumed I was selling the stuff, the barley grass juice powder that I recommend. And then they say, oh, well, of course Don Bennett's going to talk it up because he sells the stuff. Well, I understand why they made that assumption, because most people that sell supplements talk highly of them because they do sell them. They're on their website, hundreds of supplements on the people's websites. I'm cut from a different piece of cloth. I'm not doing it for the same reasons they're doing it. I don't sell it. I don't make any money off it at all. I would love to be able to do that because it's only fair that I can do that. It is a worthwhile product. It's helped a lot of people. Why can't I be the one to make the profit off it versus some other distributor that's selling it? But I purposely don't sell it, so that's off the table. That objection, that reason that, well, Don Bennett is obviously doing it, so that my recommendations will have the highest degree of credibility, okay? So I don't sell. In fact, the one that I recommend, do you know who's selling it? It's a former client of mine who, when he was helped by it, greatly helped by it, he was like, wow, he wanted to do what I was doing. Now, he couldn't spend the time to learn everything that I've learned over the decades to teach it, but he said, there's one thing I can do. I know about running a business and basically, doing distribution of things. So he buys it, in large quantities and then sells it himself, the same one that he used. And he put his own label on it. It's his own name. I had nothing to do with it at all. He asked my opinion on some of the stuff that was going to go on the label that was describing it and some of the stuff on the website. And of course, I gave it to him. But it's being sold by somebody who's selling it for the right reason. And he's selling it less than what you would buy the same product for under the original label of the original company. And I don't know why they allow him to do that, but they do, because it's undercutting their sales. But I guess not by much, because he's just one little person. But that's who's selling it. That's, in other words, when you buy, it's called Daily Green Boost, dailygreenboost.com. When you're buying it, you're buying the same product that Don Weaver used, that I used for decades, that have helped a lot of people. It's just packaged with a different label on it. But it's the same product. That's who's selling it. It's somebody who's doing it for the right reason, and he's hardly making anything on it. In other words, he's not selling it for what he could sell it for, on par with the other product that you buy at Whole Foods. So we're all doing this stuff for the right reason. So it's good to take advantage of this kind of stuff because it does help. It's not, it's not like 95% of the supplements out there where it's just giving you expensive urine.
Okay.
That's not the case.
So
I understand why it's normal for people to assume that,
lifestyle,
but don't assume these things,
maybe some of
because
the
there
other
are
aspects of health
things that can really help
just
be
diet
helpful for people.
or aren't just related. Because we spoke mostly about diet so far, and I know that you, for example, you kind of have like a mobile home, so I guess you can travel where you want, sort of thing. I guess you're in a situation that I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing that you can make a living mostly maybe online or consultations, or I don't fully know the information. So you maybe you're not tied to a corporate job or anything like that. So you've got a bit more choice maybe to fast if you like, or sleep in or whatever. I know I heard you one time say that you like listening to animal noises. I believe you said when you sleep. So just things like that. Talk about other aspects of your lifestyle that maybe things that people haven't even thought about that are relevant to health. What was
Well,
that?
sure. I came from having a
Okay.
full-time job with the phone company. It was thought of as the greatest blue-collar job you could have in the United States. It was being a technician for the phone company. So I would climb up the poles, which I loved climbing, so that worked out. So climbing up and down the poles all day, that was great. That worked out. Um, and it paid ridiculously amount of money. I think I was totally overpaid for what I was doing, but I didn't complain. But it allowed me to fund what I was doing initially, which was going out and speaking for free, traveling anywhere. I covered all the costs, printing up all the handouts and just giving them out for free. I was able to fund all that stuff. But then I got to the point where I'm saying, I'm doing all this full time. I would rather be doing this full time, the health stuff full time. I'm spending too much money, too much time doing the phone company stuff. So I quit the phone company, and no one quits the phone company. I found out everyone thought I was kidding. My boss thought I was kidding when I told them, because no one quits. There's never, unless you win the lottery. So that's what some people thought, I won the lottery. It was really hilarious. But anyway, so I left, and if I had just stayed another year, by the way, I would have been fully vested in some kind of pension, whatever it was. People were saying, "You're nuts to stay another year." I'm like, you know how valuable a year is to someone who has a finite lifespan? If I was immortal, yeah, certainly I'd stay another year. Come on, I want that pension ban. But no, it's so valuable. I could be spending that year teaching people full time this information, which is helping them recover lost health. No way am I staying. So that's when that hit me. So I quit and did this. Kind of, I'm not assuming I'd be able to make a living, but kind of. I mean, it's got to be a way to do it. I keep my outgo very low, so I have no rent, no mortgage. So that really helps to keep it low. I keep my bills really low. My phone bill per year is like $120 per year. So I figure out ways to keep my outgo real low so my income can be low, so I don't have to have a full-time job. So I hated getting up when they wanted me to get up. I like getting up when my body wants to get up. And that way I don't have to worry about when I have to go to sleep because I have to get up at a certain time. So this is great, being your own boss, basically, in your own business. So yeah, I started doing that, and it allowed me to just relax and go to the beach, write a book. I could have never written the books I wrote if I was doing a full-time job. Some people do it. I don't know how. They got to sacrifice something. I don't want to sacrifice anything. I want to have enough time for me, enough time for healthy living, and for teaching other people. So I try and balance that as best I can. Now, yes, when I wrote my books, I definitely didn't get enough exercise during that period of time because I was trying to crank out a book, and that's not, my body did not like that at all, but I wanted to get the book written. So that's the downside of when you're working on a book. If I would have tried to do it balanced and have enough time for me, enough time for the book, enough time for teaching, the book would have never got finished. It would have taken forever. So I wanted to get those books out. So I did a little sacrificing, but not much. I make sure to get enough sunshine. I'm in South Florida, so I can get, for the most part, the whole year, almost the whole year, strong enough sunshine to make vitamin D inside my skin. Okay. Other people aren't as fortunate. People that live
Yeah.
way far away from the equator, either certain parts of Australia or up in Canada. I'm trying to picture where Scotland is. I think you have a pretty lengthy vitamin D winter where there's a period of time when the sun's not going to be making D in your skin. There are things you can do about it. I teach people how to do it. There's the healthiest way, which is a machine that replicates the sun's rays where it will make vitamin D in your skin. Obviously, it's totally vegan. Nothing you have to supplement with. If you can't get that machine, then you either have to deal with supplements or you have to let yourself become D deficient if you're living far away from the equator. So I live close enough where I can get D most of the year. I do run into, we all have our genetic inborn weaknesses. I was born with some genetic defects, spina bifida, and some other things that affect me. They don't really affect me as badly now that I eat the diet that I'm designed to eat. They really affected me poorly or greatly when I ate the diet I'm not designed to eat, so that's good. But I still have certain genetic defects, Marfan syndrome, all these things have gotten better. They don't go away because they're genetic defects, but they've gotten a lot better since living normally, since living the way I'm supposed to live, the way I'm designed to live. B12 seems to be a problem for me. I can't, and maybe it's because the stress I deal with. Maybe if I was just living on a tropical island, not having to deal with, well, some of the people I have to deal with who are constantly bashing me over things that they really shouldn't be bashing me over, I wouldn't need to take any supplemental vitamin D. But I still do. And if I go for a period of time without doing it and I test my homocysteine or my MMA, yeah, they've risen too high. So I definitely have to deal with with a B12 issue, I should say. So, so what else do I do? I try and every day do some relaxing me time for me, something for the people I counsel and teach. I'm doing a lot of counseling nowadays, and that's the other funny thing. Remember I told you in the other interview that I mainly started doing what I was doing because I hated seeing people being taken advantage of for the sake of profit at the expense of their health, at the hands of the dairy industry and the meat industry and the grain industry and the tobacco industry. I hated that. I don't hate many things at all, but that's the one thing I hate. So that's what drove me to do that and then quit my job and do it full time. So that's what I was doing originally, is wanting to teach mainstream America and mainstream world how bad dairy products and meat products are on your health. But then I started getting into the raw food community and noticing how much misinformation there was, and I made a shift at some point. It was a natural shift because I saw that there were plenty of people teaching about how bad dairy products were and how bad meat is for your diet and things like that. But there wasn't anyone teaching about the misinformation that was floating around the raw food community. So I gravitated to that because, again, I don't like to see people being taken advantage of for the sake of profit at the expense of their health. And certainly, I don't like seeing them being, harmed by misinformation. That's the bottom line, okay? I don't care if it's the dairy industry or the raw food industry. I don't like seeing misinformation from anybody, even from well-intentioned people, because there are people who are honestly sincere and well-intentioned. They just got miseducated, and they're teaching something that's incorrect. Now, some of these people, once you bring it to their attention, will go, oh my God, thank you. Because they're horrified. They don't want to teach anybody incorrect information. Other people are like, well, yeah, just thanks, and you go your way and I'll go mine. You teach your way and I'll teach mine. It's not a way of teaching. We're talking about teaching people about health, the most valuable commodity. So that's when I started shifting into teaching the raw food community, really, about, what could be keeping them from attaining their health potential. And, there are people teaching the vegan community about that. Dr. Michael Greger has a great video on that. It's about an hour-long video, and they found out through research that vegans weren't attaining what their health potential should be. And why was that? Turns out to be nutritional insufficiencies. D and B12 were paramount, and there was a few other things, but they were going from a fortified diet, typical Western diet that was fortified with certain nutrients like D and B12, to a vegan diet where nothing was fortified, and they were bumping up against problems because they didn't know to be vigilant for it. So that's why vegans. So now I'm trying to show raw foodists how they could lose their advantage, their health advantage of being raw foodists. And it's amazing. The raw food diet has been around long enough, and people have been following it in some form or fashion long enough, where they're starting to then go downhill. There was an initial, benefit. There was initial improvement that they had from getting rid of a typical Western diet and adopting an all-raw diet. And that's great. But I'm not interested in just an initial benefit, Ronnie. I'm interested in long-term thriving and not surviving better than 95% of the population either, because that's what you'll get from something like, eat all raw until the last meal of the day. You won't thrive either. You will survive way better than 95% of the population, but you will not live up to your health potential, whatever that is for you. So that's what I've kind of become, is that people say, oh, you're the voice of reason, you're the voice of balance. Okay, well, that's great. So that's the niche that I've kind of fallen into, and that's why I'm so outspoken about people who are, handing out misinformation and promulgating misinformation. That's why I'm so vocal about it. But, the other aspects of health are just as important. People say, Don, in your first book, diet was the biggest chapter of your book. You also spoke about sunshine and the need for deep sleep and relaxation and social and all the other stuff, and, toxin avoidance and hydration, stress management. But diet was the biggest chapter of the book. Not that because diet is the most important thing of all the basics of health. It isn't. They're all equally important. But we give diet a lot of airtime and a lot of, mouth time because there's so much misinformation. Who's going to argue with you need enough sleep? No, no one's going to argue with that. You need to keep your stress levels as low as possible. You won't get any argument on these subjects, I don't think. But when it comes to diet, oh my God, there's everything. No, all raw, high raw, low carb, high fat, all cook, no cook. It's just it's all over the place, and it's just as ridiculous as we should be eating Italian food, or we should be eating Mexican food, or the Chinese people should be eating Chinese food. Not the kind they eat, but the kind that we serve here because it's called Chinese food. Now, that's all nonsense. We're all designed for the same basic diet. And unless you believe, Ronnie, because I bumped into somebody who believed this, that it really doesn't matter what diet you eat. It could be all raw, no raw, high raw, all carb, all fat. It doesn't really matter because we're omnivores. Dun, da, 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 which means, by his definition, it doesn't matter. We will have equal levels of health. Well, first of all, that's ridiculous because there's plenty of research, there's plenty of literature that shows, no, you don't have equal levels of health if you're eating a plant-based diet versus an animal-based diet. That right there alone, boom, cuts it right out. Omnivore is, that the person that created that whole omnivore, frugivore, herbivore thing, I forget his name, but the guy who created that, on his chart, where did he stick humans? Right, he didn't put us amongst the omnivores. So how the heck did we become omnivores? Well, I guess it's very convenient for the grain and meat and dairy industries that we're omnivore. But even if you want to use the term omnivore, because it's obvious human beings can eat, a meat-based diet, a dairy-based diet, and not die within a week. So they can do that. But if you look at omnivores, real omnivores in nature, all of them have a diet that they would rather eat and that they will eat 24/7 if they can. It's when they can't that they can eat other things to survive.
You're
not
talking about
thrive,
Carolus Linnaeus,
but survive.
the great
Okay?
taxonomist.
So we're omnivores in that sense.
To
that we
quote
can
him,
eat many different
to
things,
say that humans have the
only
anatomical
on one
structure
diet
of an
will we
omnivore
thrive.
is an
The rest of
egregiously
them will just
inaccurate
survive.
statement. Man's structure, internal and external, compared with that of other animals, shows
Yes.
that fruit and succulent vegetables are his
Yes.
natural food. That's Carolus Linnaeus, 1707 to 1778, Swedish naturalist, botanist, established the modern scientific method of classifying plants, animals, and obviously classified humans as frugivores. I just wanted to interject with that. I brought that up from Mark Tassie's website. He's got that. So sorry, just interjected there, but yeah.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was my point, that even if you want to go with the omnivore definition and apply it loosely to human beings, because of the obvious fact that we can't eat various things and not keel over dead, as a univore would. A univore can only eat one thing. If that one thing isn't there, they're out of it. But we also got to, take into consideration, how are we going to fare from eating these different diets? And me, if there's one thing you can say about me, Don Bennett is all about optimal health. It started that way for me. Before I was even thinking of teaching and counseling. It was just about me. I was being selfish about it. I wanted the optimal diet for me. I wanted to know what I had to eat to attain my, my health potential, whatever you want to call it. And then when I figured it out and did it, and I shared it with other people at the phone company, when I was sharing it with them, the little kids were getting the tubes taken out of their ears, and their ear problems were going away because I convinced the parents to get dairy products out of their diet, and they were calling me Dr. Don at the phone company. All I was doing was just sharing with them what I had discovered, how we're supposed to live. It was just that simple. It wasn't, it wasn't an allopathic approach to it. It was a natural path. I don't want to say naturopathic because I've met some naturopaths who are way off on a lot of things. But it was a more naturalistic approach. And it was like, boom, who knew? So that was my, when I started seeing that I could help people regain their lost health, because I wasn't dealing with anything serious. That's not how I came to this. I came to it intellectually because I didn't want to ever get anything serious, okay? One of the definitions of optimal health, Ronnie, is that you will have the best odds of never getting a diagnosis of something life-threatening. Or if you have something life-threatening now, you'll have the best odds of resolving it in your favor if you eat that way or live that way. So that's what motivated me to do this. I loved fixing people's telephone lines. I mean, people would come out of their house, thank you, my phone is working again, God bless you. And like, that made me feel really good that I got their phone service back. And I loved making people laugh when I did the performing thing. But to help people regain lost health or give them more of a, you can't give a guarantee, but to give them a guarantee that the odds of them getting a serious diagnosis, heart disease, cancer, is like the lowest they can possibly get for themselves, is it's its own reward. Now, you asked before, can I make a living doing this? I can make a survival doing this. I'm getting by. I don't charge what some other people charge for counseling, because if I did, I wouldn't be counseling as many people. And even some of the people I counsel with the low rate that I do, and people make fun of my rate. They say, well, you charge $750. Well, yeah, but what's that for? That's not just for one session, which I've known people who have gone and paid a practitioner $600 for an hour. So I charge $750 for 30 sessions. And the word session is loosely defined. So I have people that, they paid $750, but I've got to file this thick with them. And they have my ear for over a year already for $750. So when people hear an amount like that, and they go, wow, look, that's not per hour. Okay? And yes, there are people who are charging $30 per hour, but they've been in practice for 1 year. I don't know if I would go to somebody like that. I would go to somebody who has made sure that they practiced what they're preaching for at least a decade, or almost a decade, to know what works, what doesn't work. They research it as a researcher, not as a student. They didn't learn from somebody else. They learned on their own. They came to their own conclusions. They're insightful. These are the kind of people you want to research, that you want to learn from or counsel with. So to make a living, I have the books, and I give away the books. I give away a lot of the e-books. I even give away paperback books. I mean, I always carry them with me in my motorhome, and I see somebody doing something, reading a certain way, and I get to strike up a conversation. I go back to the motorhome, boom, and come out and just give them a book. Yeah, that costs me money. The books cost me about $10 each, and so I'll sell a book for 20, so I'll make 10 on a book. But I never got into this to make money. As long as I could survive financially, not health-wise, but as long as I could survive financially and figure out a way to keep my outgo really, really low so I wouldn't need a whole boatload of income, then I could have decent counseling rates and help a lot of people and give the books out and do all that. You want to call it altruistic? Okay, then you can define me as that. Now, the downside of that is that I can't afford to buy a new RV. And this is sad. It's 30 years old. It's giving out on me. I hope it'll make it to the Woodstock Food Festival this last year. My RV is very glad to hear that it's the last Woodstock Food Festival, because to take that journey from Florida to New York, it's a long way. I tend to be based in South Florida. I will go where anyone wants me to come and speak. And now, I don't ask to get paid for it, but if they cover my traveling expenses so I break even, that's what I go for. As long as I can break even, because I can't really afford, since leaving the phone company with that ridiculously high amount of money they were paying, I can't afford just to do that anymore, where I could just go and pay my own way. So as long as they cover my traveling expenses, I go wherever. So sometimes I do go out, and I'll drive somewhere, not over to the West Coast. I did that once. I won't do that again alone. That's a lot of driving, and so I try and stick to the East Coast. If I were to go out to the West Coast, if I were to be asked to speak out there, I would probably fly. I've been asked to speak in Southeast Asia later on this year, I think in September, in the country of Brunei, and I'll be flying. And I won't be taking my RV. I'll be flying. And even that I don't enjoy. I would not do that normally. Really, my body does not like flying to Europe or to Southeast Asia. It's just a long flight. And I'm an active person, and you can only run around a cabin of a plane so much before they start getting suspicious. But to help bring the raw food diet to Southeast Asia, to a country that really needs it, because they're very rich in one way, but they're very poor in another. They're poor in health, but they're rich in the economy and economics and personal finances. So I'm thrilled to be able to go out there and help spread the word, the message of healthy eating. We won't really be, talking again. Not going to talk about a raw food diet right off the bat, right out of the gate, but we'll just talk about things in general. The first 6 chapters, Ronnie, of my first book have nothing to do with diet or exercise or sleep or sunshine or stress management.
That's
The
great.
first 6 chapters are just trying to
Yeah,
get
just to
people
take a
to
short
value
pause again.
their health.
You're
So
going to
by
be
the end of
speaking at
chapter
the
6,
Fruits and
they'll
Health
be more
Festival in
receptive to hear
Slovenia.
about
The
what
Woodstock
is the
Food
healthiest
Festival
diet, what
can
are the
bring things
things that
up
the
again.
great health
I'm
diet-wise.
interested in hearing more
And that's
of
why
what
those
you've got
first
to
6
say.
chapters.
Yep. And for those who register for the Fruits and Health Festival, they can get 3 copies of
That's Woodstock Fruit
your
Festival?
3 books, downloadable versions of your 3 books.
Nope. So yeah, I'm old school with the graphics. Right, at no charge, as just an incentive to get off the fence and push the button and go to the events, because these 2, as I said in the first part of the interview, these are the last ones. As a festival goes, these no doubt have been the best festivals I've ever heard of, I've ever attended, either as an attendee or as a speaker. And these are going to be the last ones. And there's always something special about the last one. And they'll be crying. And there was crying last year. Remember at the Slovenia Festival, people just couldn't leave. They had a hard time leaving. And this time it'll be very, very difficult for both the Woodstock Food Festival and the Slovenia Festival. But these were the best of the festivals. There'll be something else. There'll be something else to replace them at some point, somehow. I know that, just because this is the healthiest way to live. And there are people out there who do want to know the truth about optimal health, which is what I'm about, which is what my colleagues are about, Ellen Livingston, Dr. Sam, Robert Lockhart, Ann Osborne, etc. So these are if you see these people at
One thing I was going
festivals,
to ask you
those are the
about,
festivals you want to go to. If there's any
you
kind of a
spoke
raw food
about
festival
longevity, and you believe
and
that humans,
we're not there, that should make you
I've heard
go,
you speak about that human longevity you think should be around about 120. That should maybe be a more reasonable kind of age. Uh, you mentioned that on Facebook, and you ended up, I don't know if you realize this, but you were debating my brother on one of the Facebook forums, and he's a medical doctor, so he was interested, I guess, in what you had to say. But where's that information coming from, and what's your take on human longevity?
well, that's just based on, if you look at the other anthropoid primates, the primates that are closest to us, and you look at their longevity, and if you base it on their rate of attaining their age of puberty, or I forget exactly how it's worded in the research that I read, but if you base it on that and you correlate it to us, we should be living to about 124, on a bell curve in a perfect environment. Out in the wild, stress levels are lower than they are today for us living in our modern world, getting plenty of vitamin D, getting enough of all the nutrients that we require for optimal health. We would have probably lived to about 124. So there was a time, and if you read Tony Wright's book, I think he backs this up with some additional information, that there probably was a time when we lived to about 124 on average in a relatively healthy state. Certainly not what it is today. What is it, 72 or 74? And people say, well, wait a second. Now 74, that's up from 56. So we've improved. Well, but if you look at 74 being down from 124, if indeed 124 was where we were at some point, we haven't improved. We've gone backwards if 124 is what it should be. So that's the price we pay for living in our modern environment. And again, if you could look at a raw food community, if there was enough of them around, and hopefully one day there will be, and you see them living beyond that 72 average life expectancy, that's going to start to make sense. So yeah, that's just where I got the longevity from. But again, it's also quality of life, not just the quantity of life. Somebody asked me once if you could live to 100, but with a really bad quality of life, bad, you know, the winter of your years wasn't good at all, you were an invalid, or live to 70 in pristine health, robust health, vibrant, but you died at 70 of nothing, you know, just in your sleep, which would you choose? Oh, I would choose the one with the greatest quality of life. There's no doubt about that. That's it. But I think we can have both, depending on our genetics. You know, genetics are controlling in that respect too. But we can do right by our bodies so that whatever our genetics are, genetics notwithstanding, we can live to our health and longevity potentials, which we all have, but there's no way to quantify it. There's no way to figure out in advance what our longevity potential would be, but we have one. Isn't that kind of weird? We definitely have it. There's no way to argue against it. We have one. It's self-evident, but there's no way to know in advance what it's going to be for each of us. But there is a way to know how to have the best odds of attaining it, and that's what I've been all about for all these years. Just from the timeliness of it, trying to attend the Woodstock Fruit Festival or the Slovenia, if you're in Europe, the Slovenia Fruits and Health Festival, if you possibly can, last chance to do them, and they're very special events. You will never forget them. I don't have to tell you, you were there. And if there's any best tip I can leave you with, it's to learn as a researcher. I know I've said this before, but I can't say it often enough. Learn as a researcher, not as a student. Students tend not to question what they're taught. They may ask questions of clarification of their teacher, but they tend not to question the basic premises, and certainly they tend not to question their teacher. And it's okay if their teacher is teaching them 100% correct information. But if you're learning from a health educator who has 90% correct information, well, that's way better than the people teaching the paleo diet and the other things, right? But still, if you're teaching 90% correct information and you're learning 90% correct information, but you're assuming that everything you're learning is 100% correct, no, you're learning 10% incorrect information. And what if that makes the difference between you thriving and just surviving 40 years from now? It becomes huge then. It's not going to be effective tomorrow or next week, but it's going to be huge then. Well, it might be effective now if you're trying to resolve something serious, so I take that back. But if you learn as a researcher, researchers question everything. It's just like, well, duh, of course we're going to question everything. It's part of what we do as a researcher. It's nothing personal. We question everything. Now, of course, it's a lot harder to learn as a researcher. It's a lot easier to learn as a student, obviously. But again, like I said before, this is not pottery making. You're not learning how to make pottery. Where it doesn't matter if your pottery, comes out bad or not. This is your health we're talking about. So spend the time, energy, and effort initially. You won't have to do this for the rest of your life, but initially to learn as a researcher and seek out the conflicting information, because I'm the first to tell you it's out there, and it's important that you know what it is so that you're going to end up knowing what the truth is. Now, I should preface, Ronnie, all of this by saying the very first thing that everybody needs to do before any of these suggestions that I've given to help you decide which way to go and what route to take and what person to follow or what couple to follow is decide for yourself, how healthy do you want to be? That's ground zero. How healthy do you want to be? If you don't care about having optimal health, wow, your choices are so much more. You have so much more to choose from, and it's going to be so much easier for you. But if, on the other hand, you do want optimal health for yourself, if you do want the best health that your genetics will allow you to have, then that requires being a researcher, doing multi-source education, buying not just one book, but a whole, the amount of books you'd have to buy would be this much on a shelf. So we're not really talking about that many books in order to get to the truth. And that's the bottom line. In order to get to the truth, you need about these many books, somewhere in here, okay? But if you want to research for giggles, then there's plenty of other books you can get. So that's what I would leave everybody with. First, decide how healthy do you want to be, realizing you have health potential. Don't buy into any BS out there. And remember, you might not recognize it as BS initially. You have to learn what the nonsense is and what the misinformation is. And sometimes it's being given by people. Look, when somebody says to you, you really need to consume dairy products, let's say it's your wife or your mother or somebody who honestly cares about you, there's no evil intent there. They're not trying to get you to use dairy products because they own stock in a dairy company or anything like that. They really care about you, and they honestly believe you should be consuming dairy products as part of a balanced diet. So there are people out there who are very sincere, who have simply been miseducated and are teaching some information that's not correct. It's a little bit, but again, that little bit can really derail you and come to bite you in the butt 40 years from now, when you're approaching the autumn of your life, let's say. And you don't want that. You know why you don't want that, Ronnie? Because I guarantee you, well, can I guarantee this? Yeah, this is one of the things I can guarantee. I guarantee you that if you get up to a point and you become 60 or 70 years old, or let's say 60 years old, and you get a diagnosis of something life-threatening, I guarantee you will not have access to a time machine to go back to 2015 and attend the Woodstock Food Festival and the Slovenia Food Festival and buy this many books and do it as a researcher this time and choose something different, to choose a different path so that you'll have a different outcome. You won't have that time machine. So that makes it critical that you follow correct information.
Last time for both events, so
and that's what I want to leave everybody with.
Thanks for spending the time, Don, and I think a lot of people will have found that interesting, so thank you for taking time. Thank you.